truly the way to electrify our grid. Right now, Rocky Mountain Power has goals to become 100% renewable, by, I don't know what their goal is, 2050, we'll say. The only way to do that with solar, because of the problem that I mentioned earlier where solar only produces power during the day, is to figure out this storage solution. But really what a virtual power plant is Rocky Mountain Power being able to use the customer-owned batteries to stabilize our grid and to make it so we don't have brownouts in the future, which is cool. We can be the first utility to get to, their goal for renewable energy, and it's working. It's the largest virtual power plant in the United States, Utah.
Are virtual power plants the thing of the future? I sure think so. And so does Zach Randall, who is my guest today. I went up to ES Solar out in Layton, Utah, and we had a conversation about what are virtual power plants, his experience within the door-to-door industry, and where the solar industry is going. Dive deep with us in this conversation. This is The Inward Mind. Welcome, this is Billy M. Ward, and I'm sitting here with Zach Randall. He is the VP of Sales for ES Solar. And how you doing today, Zach? Doing good? Yeah. Yeah, happy to be here. I just wanted to kind of sit down and have a conversation talking about solar and your knowledge. You've been in the industry for 17 years, 18 years almost?
17 years, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Cool.
So a long time. I've been in the door-to-door industry that long. I've been in solar for a decade.
Yeah, which is a long time. You got a lot of experience knocking doors. And I just kind of want to dive deep into your experience. Like, can you talk about your story starting in door-to-door and kind of transitioning over to solar and kind of give the listeners an idea of what you have learned over the past being in the door-to-door industry?
Yeah. So I served an LDS mission a long time ago in Southeast Asia. So, 2005 to 2007, I lived in like Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Pakistan, Singapore. So I did some door-to-door over there as well, I guess. That was really the beginning of it. And then came home from the mission and at the time it was like the big growth period in door-to-door. So Apex Alarm, bunch of the big, pest control companies and things. Every gym you go to, you'd get recruited. And I had to tell everyone no. I was working at the time for my dad, who owns a construction company. And I was dating a girl that at the time I thought was pretty cute. Her brother just happened to come home from his, very first summer. And because I liked the girl a little bit, I listened to him. And it was honestly the best decision I ever made. I look back at that as like some of the best mentors I had in my life to this day came from that office at Apex Alarm. Ty Williams, Jordan Williams, like legends in the industry, Eric Mealy, Jason Crown, and they're all still in the industry today. And so it's funny, like that was 2007 and here we are 2024 and I'm still in it. But I did alarms for Apex Alarm for years, ran teams, did summers, turned into Vivint. And then, in 2014, I bounced from Vivint Smart Home over to Vivint Solar. And I was one of the very first people that Vivint Solar hired in Utah. So I was actually one of the guys that opened up the Utah market for Vivint Solar. And, things were going good. And we grew to 7 or so offices within Utah. We had 17 different managers. I was one of them within Utah. And then in 2017, everything started changing. So Rocky Mountain Power decided, hey, we're not going to give as much money to customers for putting solar on their home and net metering. And it panicked everybody and everyone left. And so I didn't want to leave. I'm a Utah guy. So, I said, hey, I want to stay here. I know that the solar is not going away in Utah. It's maybe easier in other states, but I'd got to know the owners of ES pretty well. They'd done some commercial projects for me, Jeff and Chris, and they were pretty small at the time, but I came over in 2018 with a handful of guys from Vivint Solar. And at the time, I think we had 30 or so employees. Fast forward to today, we've got 500 or so employees, and we're doing, 120, $130 million in revenue, where back then we were doing maybe 10. So the company's grown exponentially, and we've kind of become a powerhouse in Utah, and especially with, batteries. And I think we're going to get into that here in a little bit, but it's been a huge blessing for me. And we call it the rocket ship for a reason. ES Solar's a rocket ship, and it's growing like crazy, and it's continuing. It's just the beginning. So it'll be fun to see where we're at 5 years from now.
What would you say is different about ES Solar compared to other companies? Because you've been here now for almost 6 years.
Yeah.
What separates
just 6
ES?
years exactly,
Yeah.
Actually. I just hit my LinkedIn told me it was couple days ago. It was
Well,
my six-year anniversary. So
congratulations.
yeah, it's been awesome. So there's a lot of things that separate us. I feel like most of the solar industry is a little bit different in that they kind of run to the hot market. I feel like, when things get tough and things change, because we call it the solar coaster for a reason, things change all the time. Solar's heavily reliant on tax incentives from the government. They're heavily reliant on net metering. Those are the two big pillars. And when one of those things changes, everyone panics and they run. ES is different in that, we're a Utah company. This is where our roots are. The founders are from here. I'm from here. And we adapt and we change. And we have several times as interest rates have gone up, as, tax credits have changed and then come back, and then more importantly, as net metering has pretty much gone away. Instead of panicking and jumping to a different state, we figure out where our cheese is, if you will, like who moved my cheese. We figure out where that is and we adapt and thrive. And so that's the main thing. I mean, other than, we're a full service contractor, which is a big deal for someone that's looking to go solar. A lot of the solar companies aren't installers. They are, a sales company that finds an installer, an EPC, to go out and do the install, where we take care of the customer from the entire process. We're vertically integrated. So the designs happen in-house, the sales team's in-house, the installers are in-house, the customer service is in-house. So everything from start to finish happens right here. So those are the two major differences, I'd say.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've seen ES Solar. I first came around in like 2021 when I did your guys' first one of your kickoff meetings, and it was crazy to see the difference of culture of some of the other companies that I've seen within the solar industry. And I was like, I love ES Solar. It's good. I've actually recommended you to my parents and to my parents-in-law, and they both have systems from ES,
Awesome.
Which is cool.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
You were talking about net metering changes. What are some of the differences now in 2024 with net metering? Because that's what a lot of people are used to within the solar industry. What has changed in 2024 thus far?
Yeah, so it's tough for solar contractors to hear this. We've learned a lot, in the last few years, because in 2020, that was really the big change in Utah. And now we're starting to see net metering throughout the country change. So it happened here first. Rocky Mountain Power doesn't want and shouldn't have to, honestly. If you understand grid sciences and kind of how solar works, net metering doesn't make sense. Once you hit a certain amount of solar adoption, you get too much solar on the grid, it can be a detrimental thing to the grid. And we've learned that. I mean, I know I'm a solar guy, so a lot of the solar guys are like, hey, they're just an evil, greedy monopoly, and they don't care about renewable energy. That's not the case. If you sit down with Rocky Mountain Power, the way that it works. So basically what's happening, just to tell you, like big picture, there's so much solar on the grid now in states like California and Arizona that, you're basically, you think about when solar produces electricity, they're pumping a lot of electricity into the grid during the day when the sun's out. Okay. To the point where the power companies in California are having to shut off their base generation, like their nuclear and their natural gas turbines. Those are things that you traditionally don't want to shut off because they take days sometimes to get those turbines going again. So they have to shut that off because their substations are just getting pounded with solar energy, right? And then all of a sudden the sun goes down, and it's a major problem because you need energy quick. You can't fire up the big turbine anymore, your baseline generation. So you got to go to what's known as a peaker plant. And the peaker plant is like you're burning diesel fuel or you're burning coal, and it's really expensive and it's really dirty. And so when the sun goes down in California, we call it the duck curve. The belly of the duck keeps getting bigger and bigger because all this solar energy keeps going onto the grid. And then the sun goes down and you have to ramp up power really, really fast. So we talk about like having clean air and all this stuff. If you understand grid sciences, and I'm a solar guy, traditional solar, net metering, when you get too much of it, can actually make things worse as far as air quality goes. And so that's what we've had to learn from the utilities. Now there's a solution to it, and that's batteries. And so long story short, what happened is in 2020, Rocky Mountain Power started getting paid from PG&E, the major power company in California, to take solar energy off their hands. Not given away for free because there's too much of it. So Rocky Mountain Power is looking at it like, well, hold on, if we're getting paid from PG&E to take power off our hands from solar during the day, why on earth are we incentivizing homeowners in Utah by giving them full retail value for their solar to put us in the same situation? We have to figure out a storage solution. So they changed the net metering agreement in 2020 to make it so you basically lost your financial benefit unless you did storage. So batteries were the solution. And so in 2020, we went, everyone left or panicked or lied to customers and said, hey, you don't need a battery because they're hard to sell, hard to install. It changes everything for the solar company's perspective. We said, well, hey, if we're going to make it here as a company long-term, we've got to figure out storage. So we were one of the pioneers in figuring out first how to sell it. And that was easy. It wasn't easy, but we had to figure out, it's more money, so how do we pitch this to customers? So we figured that out pretty quick. The hard thing was how to install it because, right now we have 13 or 14 install crews. Each crew, when it was solar only back in the day, would do 1 to 2 jobs a day easily. You know what I mean? It's glass only, and all you solar contractors know this, it's not that difficult to do. When you start throwing in backup loads panels and extra sub panels, all the electrical work that needs to be done for batteries, you need an electrician on every crew. Most companies don't have that. We had to get that. So it went from 1 to 2 installs a day to it was taking us 3, 4, 5 days to do a single install, and it just we got to where it was taking us 7 months from sell to install, where our goal's always been like 35 to 60 days. So it was rough, but we figured it out. We got through that, and then now you're seeing, after Utah did it, now California in April of this year, they got rid of net metering. I don't know if you're aware of that, but they got rid of it. NEM 3.0 just went into effect. If you're in California, you can't do solar without batteries. It literally doesn't make sense. And so everyone's kind of running and struggling from California, and we just acquired a small company in California, ES Solar did, and we're running towards it because we're kind of custom built for it because of what we went through here in Utah.
Yeah, you guys are definitely prepared, and that's the kind of the transition point of what I want to talk to is in 2021, the first time I ever heard virtual power plant was from you guys. I was listening to one of your guys, I think it was your CEO or somebody else speaking, like, we got to start creating more virtual power plants. And that kind of has piqued my interest ever since of like, I've been meaning to make this video and do a podcast like this for a long time because virtual power plants are a thing of where the future needs to go. And that solves that problem that was with net metering. So can you kind of explain what is a virtual power plant? Because most people are like, that just sounds kind of weird. What is a virtual power? It is weird.
Yeah. I don't know who coined the phrase. I think it might have been Rocky Mountain Power, actually. But yeah, it's truly the way to electrify our grid. So they're looking at it like, right now, Rocky Mountain Power has goals to become 100% renewable, by, I don't know what their goal is, 2050, we'll say. The only way to do that with solar, because of the problem that I mentioned earlier, where solar only produces power during the day, is to figure out this storage solution, right? And they found out by doing a project, so kind of a quick story for you. Our VP of commercial, Nick Evans, he used to be the VP of commercial for a company called ARIC that's no longer around. Okay, they were a big competitor of ours back in the day here in Utah. They did a lot of commercial projects. They did Rio Tinto Stadium. They did, but Nick got in with the Wasatch Group, DeWoy Hansen, big real estate developer here in Utah. A lot of people know his name, and he wanted to build like an off-grid type community. So he decided he was going to build this huge community. It's in Harriman, Utah. It's called Solar Lofts. It's been in Forbes magazine. It's a big deal. The very first virtual power plant in the United States. And he saw kind of what a virtual power plant was, which is basically a utility controlled, customer owned battery solar like type solution is what a virtual power plant is. And he talked about, in Europe, they're doing these virtual power plants. So in Germany and things, where the utility can actually use the batteries in people's homes to stabilize the grid and to make it so we don't have brownouts, blackouts. Basically, it takes the place of burning coal or burning diesel fuel in a peaker plant. You can do that same thing with a battery that's charged by solar, so it's clean, renewable energy inside of a customer's home. And that's what a virtual power plant is. So they did, long story short, they Rocky Mountain Power got involved in that project. They put a lot of their own money into that project just to see how it would work. And Solar Lofts, I can't remember how many apartments there are, but every single apartment has its own Sonnen battery within it. And that was the kickoff of the WattSmart virtual power plant program. So it was a test run. It went really, really well. In 2020, when Rocky Mountain released, their new net metering rates, they also released the WattSmart incentive for customers to opt into being part of a virtual power plant, which basically their battery is used to stabilize the grid. So anytime the grid goes below 60 hertz, we usually have to fire up like a peaker plant. So instead of doing that, what Rocky Mountain Power can do now is they can call on the hive of batteries that we've installed, Soleil Lofts, and we've installed 6,000 or so batteries in Utah since then. We've done 98% of the batteries on WattSmart that's why they announced us as a partner, because we've done pretty much all of the batteries for the virtual power plant. So they can call on the hive of batteries that we've installed within seconds and stabilize the grid. And it only takes a small percentage out of the customer's battery. We're talking 3% state of charge. They're paying that customer for that, but also it's cleaning up, the air in Utah and everything else. And then the customer gets the benefit of being totally self-reliant. So when the grid goes down, they can have what they've always wanted in solar, which is a battery and a energy system that can recharge the battery even if there's a long-term outage. So they have their own power plant, if you will. But really what a virtual power plant is Rocky Mountain Power being able to use the customer-owned batteries to stabilize our grid and to make it so we don't have brownouts in the future, which is cool.
That's awesome. Do you know how long it would take for them to be able, because you said launching up a peaker plant, like if they're starting to hit beneath 60 hertz, do you know how long that it would take for them to pull on those batteries? Is it like almost instantaneous? They could just draw
within 3 seconds. So the Sonnen battery, we install a few different batteries. The main one's Sonnen. That's our partner, and they're the ones that kind of have developed this concept with Rocky Mountain Power. It's their back end, like their stuff that Rocky Mountain Power uses. So Sonnen's awesome. There's other batteries that have been brought on that we install as well, like Solar Edge. But the Sonnen battery can respond within 3 seconds, which is insane. It's very, very quick, and it's very effective. And Rocky Mountain's saying, hey, they love this because they're like, we can actually electrify our grid. We can be the first utility to get to, their goal for renewable energy. And it's working. So they're stoked about it. Customers are stoked. They've always wanted the battery. Batteries aren't cheap. So Rocky Mountain's incentivizing them by giving them a cash, rebate up front to help make the battery more affordable. Obviously there's tax credits available on the battery and financing and everything else, but it's been a game changer for us. And in my opinion, it's the future of the whole solar industry. Life without net metering is what we call it. Net metering is going away. It started here. It's gone to California. Other utilities are talking about, they have a little bit of a runway and then it'll end. So instead of running around trying to find which state has the best net metering, I think most solar contractors should be looking at what's the next phase of solar. And if you can figure out that, we've learned that if you can figure out the storage component, that you'll actually work with the utility, not against them. It's a win-win-win. For the first time in my career, we have the utility company on our side, if you will. I mean, they are cheering us on, where we used to feel like it was really combative and we were fighting against them. We don't feel that way at all anymore.
Yeah, that's great. Is Utah using like virtual power plants? Does Utah have the most virtual power plants compared to other states, or is that like, do you guys have the data on that?
It's the largest virtual power plant in the United States, Utah, which is crazy. It's right here in Utah, and it's built by ES Solar, Rocky Mountain Power for the most part. I mean, there's other solar contractors that have done some WattSmart. We've done 98%. So we've done most of it. Now California is probably going to pass it. I mean, California, they just went into an M3.0. They're doing incentives. They're building virtual power plants. And I mean, their solar industry is, if you add up all the other states combined, California's solar industry is bigger than the rest of them combined, right? Like our office right now is in Sacramento, and there's more solar customers just in the little Sacramento area than there are in all of Utah by far. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. California's some contractors like Sunrun, the biggest contractor in the United States, they've actually kind of bought in and they've done a good job. So other contractors have left the state of California, which is crazy to us. We're like, well, we'll go in. If you guys are leaving, we'll go in because it's a huge opportunity. It's not easy, but it's a huge opportunity and we're taking advantage of it for sure.
Yeah, and that's great. I love the fact that Rocky Mountain Power just kind of has partnered with you guys to kind of move that WattSmart program and move batteries into more homes and create a more stable grid. Because I'm creating a YouTube video right now talking about that's the dark side of solar is most people don't do that. They don't have solar with a battery, so they end up at the end of the day, power goes out when it goes dark. They lose all that benefit because now that net metering is going away. So can you you guys are partnered with Rocky Mountain Power and Sonnen. Do you kind of want to talk about your partnerships with both of those companies and kind of how those started and what that's kind of turned into for ES Solar?
Yeah, so really because of Soleil Lofts, Nick Evans, our VP of commercial here, and his relationship that he developed with Sonnen and with Rocky Mountain Power on that project, what happened was 2020 hit, net metering changes. We also had COVID. We were installing a different battery at the time. We didn't know much about virtual power plants. We were just like, hey, we kind of had the old solar contractor mentality, like who cares what the utility wants? Like we're just going to do our own thing. So we're installing a different battery at the time. And during COVID, you just couldn't get them. We got to a point where like we had installed or promised all these customers all these batteries. We were going and installing their solar, and they were in ships off because they were coming from Korea. They're in ships, off the shores of California. We couldn't get them. And so Sonnen was like, they're a little bit higher end battery. So they're more expensive. They're a little bit harder to install. So that's why we kind of avoided them at first, but Nick kept pushing us like, hey guys, this is the best battery you can get. It's the safest battery. It's a lithium iron phosphate. There's no thermal runaway. So everyone worries about if I have a battery in my garage, if it catches fire. I mean, we've seen what happens with electric cars. You can't put the fire out, right? Sonnen's, you can't even catch the things on fire pretty much. I mean, they're incredible that way. They're the safest battery. They're the longest lasting battery. They are a little bit more premium on the more premium end than like a Tesla or an LG. I mean, they're more expensive. And so we've kind of tried to avoid them. And finally Nick got Sonnen to come in and talk to us and say, hey, we can provide your batteries. And not only that, let's talk to you about what a virtual power plant would do for your customers, and they can get these rebates. And so we got educated on it. We went all in, and it took off. And so we went, we're so glad we had that partnership with Sonnen. We've got to know the CEO and all their people are awesome. So we work really, really closely with them. Rocky Mountain Power, it's not really a partnership with them. It's a partnership with WattSmart specifically, which is a division of Rocky Mountain Power. And it wasn't like they came to us. I know there's a lot of rumors out there, like a lot of other solar companies think that like we're in cahoots with them or whatever. That's not really the case. Really what happened was they were trying to get everyone to do this, and we were the only ones that figured it out. And maybe there'll be others. I mean, we've actually helped with that, trying to help other contractors buy into it. It's not easy. Like, so you got to change your whole business model. We had to restructure all of our crews. We had to hire, electricians aren't cheap. We had to hire electricians a lot. We're electrician heavy on the install side because you just have to be with batteries. But we formed a partnership with them really because we were doing all the rebates. And then they came to us last year and they said, well, hey, this is great. You guys are doing all your installs. We had a 98% battery attachment rate, which in the industry is unheard of. I know Sunrun was like stoked because they got over 50% right now in California, which is cool. They do a lot more volume than us, but 98% is our attachment rate right now, which is crazy. And it has been since 2020. But really what's been awesome is, Rocky Mountain Power said, what we really need though, is we need someone to go figure out how to go to all the existing solar we have in Utah. We have 80,000 some odd solar arrays, and we need that firmed up. We need those customers to add batteries more than anything. That's more important to the grid. That's more important to everything. And so no one had ever done that before. Those aren't even our customers, a lot of them. And we've done 10,000 or so installs in Utah. There's 80,000. So we've done a lot of them, but we took that on last year, and that's been awesome. We go to customers that already have solar. Maybe, their companies are out of business. Their systems might not even be working. We kind of fix up their system, bring them under our umbrella as far as warranties go, and get them a battery, get them more rebates, get them, that missing piece that they've always wanted. And that's really been huge. A big part of our business right now is that. So kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What would you say is the vision finally for ES Solar? Because you've been here now for a few years and you have seen it grow from being really small to a couple 100 million plus in installs and stuff like that. Where is the vision for ES Solar? Are you talking about expanding to different states, or what is the vision?
Yeah. So the main focus right now is maintaining Utah and Idaho, right? Because we're getting a lot more market share, obviously, with a lot of the companies leaving Utah. I feel like, but as far as growth goes, we're doing almost 50% of the installs in Utah. I don't know how much further we can grow in Utah, but we definitely are planning to grow. We want to be a national player in this virtual power plant. I feel like we're custom built for it, and it's the next transition. Even Elon Musk is saying, hey, that's the future, right? So we just happen to have a couple year jump on everybody. So that's part of why we are jumping into California. I envision We already have one office in California, and we're looking at expanding more. I envision that we'll be doing by this time next year as much business in California as we are in Utah and Idaho. So we're going to double in the next year or two what we're doing right now, just because of, I mean, the market's huge there, and we're kind of custom built for that NEM 3.0 environment that everyone's in right now. So I think, it's just the beginning. I say this all the time to our guys, like, it's crazy to see the growth in the last 6 years, but I think the next 6 years will grow more than we did in the last 6 years, which is awesome.
What would you say, just for someone who is like on the fence about getting solar, what would you say would something that would convince them to even think about going solar? Because I have some people in some family like, well, I might want to go solar, but it's too expensive, or I don't know if it's actually going to be worth it to go solar. What would you say to some of those people that are considering going solar but are kind of on the fence?
Yeah, I would just say, look at the situation you're in. I don't think people don't realize how big of a benefit going solar is until they've actually done it. And there's a lot of benefits of solar, but you think about it, there's only two choices. Okay, so you're either going to stay with Rocky Mountain Power, which they're a good company. Their rates have been traditionally low, but in all reality, you look at, we're the fastest growing state right now in the country. We're the cheapest power company in the country, Rocky Mountain Power is. Is that sustainable? You think about inflation, what everyone's dealing with right now with gas prices, everything else, that affects Rocky Mountain Power too. And they're a monopoly. They're a good monopoly. They take care of us, but they have to make a profit. They're guaranteed to make a profit. And right now if you look on the docket, there's a potential change coming in October of this year to rate structures for everyone in Utah. They're looking at a time of use structure, which makes sense as a utility, but that's where you get hammered. If you're using power between 1 and 8 p.m. where everyone uses power, the majority of their power, it's going to be 5-6 times more expensive probably than what they're used to right now. So that's coming, right? In my opinion, the idea of solar, I never compare it as like an investment, because it is of sorts. Some of these, I compare it like, what's better, Rocky Mountain Power or solar? And I love the fact that I own my panels. I don't have any payments now. You can't do that with power. You can't pay off your power, right? I love the fact that I've had 5 or 6 major outages since I installed my battery a couple years ago. One of them, I was out of the country. My in-laws were staying with my 4 little kids. Middle of February, I live in, Morgan County, Utah. There's a lot of snow. And I get an email alert from Rocky Mountain Power saying, hey, power's going to be out for 7 hours. I look at my security cameras. My in-laws were watching Disney Plus with my kids down in the basement. I had no idea. And I've had several experiences like that with my battery that, like, until you've gone through that, until you've had a windstorm that wiped out power for your neighborhoods we had a couple years ago for a couple weeks, you don't realize the value. I mean, I'd say besides like food storage and water, the next most important thing is probably electricity. A lot of us would die without electricity. And I love the fact that, I've had experiences where all my neighbors are without power and I'm with power. And that's, until you go through that, you don't really realize the value of that. Owning your own power, not having to pay someone forever. You'll never pay off your power bill. It might be a little bit more expensive, I'd argue, right now than it would be to just stay with Rocky Mountain Power, but kind of like owning a home. It's always less expensive probably to rent if you're going to do it short term, but no one would tell you long-term renting is a good investment, right? Same idea with power. Long-term, you're going to be better off paying off your panels, owning your own power, because you look at what's going on in the country with power rates right now. And I don't think Utah's going to be far behind. Besides people's mortgages, I'd say that their power bills and utility bills are probably the highest fixed expense inside their home. I mean, we see people in California that have $1,200 a month power bills. So, I mean, doesn't happen very often in Utah unless you have a massive house, but it'll come. We're a little behind them, and we've kept our rates down, but it's not possible to keep rates. Everything goes up, right? So understanding that, plus there's tax incentives and rebates, through getting a battery. I mean, there's so many reasons why, in my opinion, it's better to own your own power and own your own virtual power plant, like truly be self-reliant, than to rely on whatever the rate is going to be with the power company and if they're going to have power or not. So that's my 2 cents.
What would you say? A lot of people are concerned about grid integrity for all of the nation. Do you think, what is your perspective on the grid in the United States as of right now? I know it's kind of like a question of off the cuff, but
yeah,
it's kind of just come up when you're talking about grid.
It's a valid concern. I mean, I talk to a lot of people that are a lot smarter than me, a lot of our customers, that's one of the reasons why they want to own their own power and have their own virtual power plant. Because they're like, look, our grid's a threat. You know, there's countries out there that don't love us. And that's one of the things that's vulnerable. They could attack. And gosh, I'd love to have something that if they did, I'd hopefully be okay. You know, and obviously we've never had anything like that happen, and hopefully it never does. But I've never had to dig into my food storage either, and hopefully I never do. You know, I still have it. I've never been in a car accident, but I still wear my seatbelt. That's kind of the mentality that a lot of the customers and the culture here in Utah and Idaho, and a lot of people in California, they deal with a lot more outages there than we do here. The power company got sued in California because they started a big fire. So now every time the wind blows, they just turn people's power off. So that'd be really frustrating, right? So we see that a lot in California where people are like, hey, I want to take control. I don't like it when I have to rely on others. I want to own my own power. And I think that's how most of our customers feel. And hopefully nothing like that ever happens. But if it does, I can feel good at night that our thousands of customers that we've helped out are in a better situation they would be without it. For sure. Yes.
Well, Zach, thanks for sitting down.
Yes.
It's been good to know a little bit further information about the solar industry and kind of tapping into your years and years of knowledge for hearing solar and getting to know a little bit how the direction that solar should be going. And that's why I was making this whole video about for YouTube, is that's where all solar should be going. And you guys are kind of pioneering, and I'm happy to be able to sit down and talk with you guys. So
we're glad to have you guys. Yeah, anytime. Come back anytime. So
awesome.
Good to see you.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, guys.